Hi, Todd here from Urban Sound Studio, and today we're taking a look at Softube's latest addition to the Console 1 mixing system. This is Console 1 Channel Mark III. Now typically I'm taking more of an educational approach and showing you how to do things on hardware. Today I want to take a different approach. I want to share with you the top 10 reasons that I decided to add Console 1 Channel as a permanent piece within my mix workflow. So let's dive on in and see what it has to offer. First up, Console 1 Channel is DAW Agnostic. What does that mean? Well, I get sessions all the time in Ableton Live, Cubase, Reaper, Pro Tools, Logic, even Luna these days. And let's be honest, we can't be a master of every DAW. We could be competent to some extent, but not a master. Well, the editing will still take place within your DAW. That's the trimming, the copying, the looping of regions, that type of thing. But when it comes to your mix task, Console 1 Channel does not care what DAW you're using. That means it maintains a consistent workflow from DAW to DAW. Let's take a look at what I mean. Your region editing still takes place in the DAW. This is your trimming of regions, copying, and other editing tasks. But one of the problems with flipping between DAWs is that they each have their own processing. Channel's core mixing suite gives you the essential tools so that you have the same tools regardless of DAW. Let's start with some effect compression. And now I'll add an opto compressor on the second slot. I'll use the vintage EQ to add some vibe on the top end and roll off the low end. And in the second slot, I'll make more of a surgical correction. I have all of these sounds at my fingertips on channel, regardless of the DAW. DAW Navigation. Okay, this ties a little bit into my first point, but it's different at the same time. With Console 1 Channel, everything is right at your fingertips, and it makes mixing with Console 1 Channel and navigating through your DAW much faster than using a mouse. Notice that as I switch between tracks, I get feedback on my display as to what track I'm on. The track names and colors are reflected on the hardware, and the colors of each track are reflected by the track selectors at the top. You get 3 LEDs of metering to see which tracks have active audio regions. You can see I get feedback on EQ, compression, shape, and drive as I adjust parameters. However, I prefer to manually set my screens for DAW navigation and use my ears with the EQ. This shows me my input meter on the left and my track name, number, and color on the right. Being able to customize the screens allows you to fit to your own personal mix needs. Let's solo a few tracks. Now, let's hold the solo button and we can see which tracks are soloed, making it easy to unsolo multiple tracks at once. And of course, if we mute multiple tracks, we could then hold the mute button to see which tracks are muted. This makes for a super fast workflow. Effects routing. With the previous generation of Console 1, we were limited to only 3 sends, but Console 1 Channel gives you up to 6 sends. For me, this is a game changer because I could set up all of my effects and buses right from the start before I start mixing. And with the feel of the analog field potentiometers, I'm able to automate with much more control and with much more musicality than I ever have been able to in the past. I already have my buses set up with one of my templates: a chamber, plate reverb, lexicon hall, tape echoes, and then an 1/8 followed by a 16th note delay. Let's turn on Console 1 Channel. Bank over and select track 14, which is my shaker. I'll start by sending to a chamber sound. Now let's send to a triplet tape delay. This isn't the right one, so let's turn that down and send to send 5 for an even eighth note delay. Great, now let's solo our claps. I'll send to a plate reverb this time for a brighter attack, and I'll even cut the lows and open the highs. This time, let's send those to the tape echo triplets. And the knobs feel great for musical automation of any of these sends. Console 1 channel offers more drive. With the new tape preamp section, I can actually saturate my tracks prior to shaping, EQing, and compressing. And then I still have a output stage where I could add drive and character. This actually allows me to simulate what people like about Luna and Studio One mix effects and be able to take that into any DAW. Let's listen to what I'm talking about. Turn on the tape preamp section and turn up the input. I'll exaggerate this for the sake of YouTube. You can use the output to level match the additional gain from driving the input harder. You instantly get the sound of tape and harmonic summing across any tracks where you want to enable this feature, similar to Luna or the mix effects in Studio One. You then have a second stage of saturation in your drive section. The character will allow you to select the perfect color of drive to fit your needs. Six bands of EQ. This is a huge time saver for me. On the previous generation, we only had 4 bands, and now these 6 bands are fully parametric with a variable Q or bandwidth on each band. Additionally, we could do it all from the hardware without needing to return to the DAW to insert another equalizer. This means we can tackle things like resonant frequencies or other problems in our tracks right from the hardware. It saves time and it's more musical. We now have 2 fully parametric outer bands. This means that we can now make changes we weren't able to make before, like altering our Q or bandwidth. We can also set these outer bands to be a shelf or a filter. This is great because with 6 bands, we can now use our lowest band to filter out the low end and still have 5 additional bands for EQ. Previously, with only 4 bands, I would cut by using the filter from the filter section on the left. But we can now reserve those filters to use as a filter to compressor option, which I use a ton for making sure my low frequency energy isn't overworking my compressors. In addition to this, we now have 2 additional bands of EQ when holding Shift. This allows us to tackle any mix task right from the hardware. Dual compressor sections. This one's a big one for me because honestly, in the past, I would try to use one compressor to tackle everything all at once, and it didn't always work. Well, with 2 compressor slots, we don't need to return to the DAW, and we can set up our chain to work perfectly to tackle both our transients and smooth out our audio. Or get the sound of one compressor and use the other one to tackle things like our dynamic range. Let's see what I'm talking about. Let's group the snare tracks together, numbers 21 and 22. Now let's add some FET compression. I'll overdo the settings to exaggerate a ton of character. Now I'll parallel mix some dry signal back in. Now we could use a second compressor such as the bus comp to tackle the dynamic control tasks. Here's another feature I love. Core Mixing Suite's Dual Dynamics. It's my new secret weapon. But first, let me show you my old trick. I would use harmonics and turn down the DTC or dynamic transient control to make my drums sound larger than life. Another old trick of mine was to use the Weiss Gambit series shape to make things sound bigger. The problem with these tricks is that they make everything sound huge, but in doing that, they smear the low frequency transients. So let's use Core Dual Dynamics. We'll solo our low band and tighten it up. Now let's solo the high band and make just the top sound larger than life. Now listen to the difference. Control of track width and now even track depth with Core Panner. This gives you the sound of binaural panning and allows you to place a sound within a space without the use of reverbs and delays. It's what takes a direct sound and really puts it in its proper place for the first time on Console 1.
Take me.
The background vocals are in the way of the lead vocal, so let's focus only on them. We can bring them further into the room and then adjust their placement in a binaural panning sort of way to get the perfect balance.
All the way, make me levitate. Take me all the way, make
Let's widen the stereo image some more.
levitate. Take me all the way, make
Now listen to how they surround the lead vocal and get out of the way of the lead.
and take me all the way, make me levitate.
If you're familiar with my channel, you know I'm a fan of analog summing and a hybrid workflow where I integrate some analog gear. Well, Console 1 channel gives me a collection of tools and colors that I've never had before, and it works perfectly to complement that workflow. Best yet, there are times that I can't take that hybrid workflow with me, especially when I'm on the road. Well, Console 1 channel allows me to simulate that hybrid workflow and analog sound directly from an in-the-box workflow, and I want to show you how I set that up. You can see that each group of instruments goes to an aux track, which typically gets sent to my analog hardware and summing mixer. When integrating my analog gear, it means that I have Console 1 to handle the tasks that need detailed recalls, such as EQ or saturation. In the case of not having my analog gear available, I can simulate much of my hardware sound through the tape preamp section, the drive, and the sound quality of the overall processing. And best yet, when I don't have my Console 1 channel available, the new Console 1 plugin now allows me to manipulate parameters even without the Console 1 hardware. Last up is the ability to customize channel strips. Let me go ahead and say this, I hate presets. I don't use them on EQ and compressors because it doesn't know what the source material is. However, channel strips allow you to populate your entire channel strip with the processing you're going to need. And Console 1 channel's analog field potentiometers allow you to quickly tweak that with a great feel. For those of you who do like presets, Channel comes loaded with a great collection. And many of those are great starting points. But for me, I do like building my own. Maybe I want the Chandler Limited curve bender in the second slot for my drums. Or maybe in the second compressor slot, I want a UAD Fairchild. It saves me a ton of time from loading individual plugins as inserts in my DAW. When I'm done, I hit Shift plus Save Preset, and I could save my own customized channel strip as a starting point for a future session. Just hit Load Preset and you'll see your preset all ready to go. Thanks for watching. What do you think? Is Console One Channel going to become a part of your studio workflow? If so, how's it going to improve things? And if you have any questions, please leave those questions in the chat below. As always, please help support this channel by liking the video and hitting subscribe.